And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. I think all of Boston, there's a jump in people's step. We're recording this on Monday. People are flying above the ground ever since the Linus Ullmark goalie goal. People have just been on a different level. I mean, people are nice to each other at dunks, and it's like the Sam Adams commercial where everybody's nice to each other.
Yes.
It's a switch has been flipped in the city of Boston.
Yeah, it's a nice change of pace. Feels a little odd. Yeah, there's too many people that are, in a great mood at my local Dunkin'. Like the person handing me the coffee had a smile on his face. So it just felt kind of off, Like, again, the vibes are good with this team right now. The Commonwealth is doing well, but again, we've got a couple of snowstorms on the way. People are going to be very pissed in short order. Things were getting back to normal. Hopefully, the Bruins don't fall into the same malaise that the rest of the region will be in. But so far, the vibes have been very good, as you said.
Hopefully they don't. But this goalie goal deserves some time. Incredible. And we knew it was coming. You knew, like, I fully believe Swayman is going to score this year or at some point in the near future. Whether
He might
that's
have a hat trick.
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny is Swayman's got to be kicking himself because in the game before against the Kraken, Swayman had all the time in the world with an empty net to float one up, but he didn't. Credit to him, he gave up 5 goals that game. He just can't be going for the empty net. But in reality, it feels like it's been coming. It almost happened at the Winter Classic. People forget that puck slid just wide of the net. What did you think though when that whole play was developing? I was stunned.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the ones where it's stunning. Obviously, first time it's happened for a Bruins goalie, but you look at the way the season has gone, it's like this is about right. Like I was like, oh
Yes.
man, this makes sense, right? Like you just
Yes.
got everything that has gone right for this team, whether the number of players who have made major strides that are contributing beyond the usual suspects that we expect to fuel the success of this team. And for Ullmark, I think it's just a really cool moment. It's not a cherry on top because there's still a lot more work to be done, but when you just look at kind of the ups and downs this guy has had, stepping in to an already very volatile and high pressure position in terms of a goaltender for the Boston Bruins. They sign him. There's doubters in terms of what he can bring this team. At $5 million is too much, which looks pretty good now, I would say, in terms of how much his contract is. Goes through a few ups and downs last year. He has also the pressure of not only stepping into Tuukka Rask's spot, but if you're a Bruins fan, you look at Jeremy Swayman as kind of the heir apparent. You probably want to see more of his reps as well after the promise he showed in the last couple of seasons. So not the easiest way for Ullmark to go from a pretty floundering Buffalo team to kind of the high pressure spot here in Boston. But to see the strides he's made this year has been incredible. I mean, he's, I think, the Vezina front runner. He hasn't really shown any hints or spots of slowing down at all. And for him to finally get rewarded with a moment like that where he scores a goal, just lost it over the entire Canucks team. Really, really cool moment and a fitting kind of reward for a guy that I think has been right at the top, if not the most important reason why this team has been such a wagon this year.
Oh yeah, and again, I mean, I think he's the Vezina front runner right now, and it's just kind of a cool extra thing to be like, hey, he also scored a goal this year. Wouldn't surprise me if he scored another. I mean, the way that him and Swayman handle the puck. I mean, the way the season's going at this point, you never know. Imagine that if that happened at the Garden. Oh, that play.
My
I don't think
goodness.
fans would. I don't think fans would have left yet. I think they'd still be there cheering it on. An interesting thing about the Ullmark goal, and I was watching. He did an interview with Elaine Cavalieri with the Bruins. And he mentioned how, when he was shooting it, the Canucks didn't have a lot of speed coming at him, but there were 3 like right there. So if he fans on that and that, goes right into one of those players and they just put it in the empty net, we're talking about a very different thing here. So I think it was interesting to kind of realize, oh, wait, that wasn't like a complete shoe-in either. Like that was kind of risky, but it paid off. And again, I mean, it's just, I think it kind of symbolizes his season. It's just been so good. And he's also been so good. This is not like, Dryden McKay at Minnesota State where, he's getting 18 shots a game. Ullmark has won them many games. And to
Yes.
me, I mean, I don't think, obviously the goal helps get him more national, attention. But I think we all around here were kind of like, yeah, he's the Vezina this year. As long as anything crazy doesn't happen. But I mean, he just continues to dominate, and you see it, and it kind of symbolizes the whole season a little bit because it just felt right. The hug after Swayman jumping into him, and the whole thing him going through the line. Like, I don't know, Connor. We've said this a few times this year, but just something about this team.
Yeah, it's you look at so many of these different games, whether it's the Winter Classic, that comeback win over the Penguins down in Pittsburgh, countless games so far. So even this Dallas game recently, there's so many moments along the way, or so many almost boxes that this team has checked. It's not like this team has just been a buzzsaw and they're crushing teams in and out, which they are doing, but it's also just the way they're doing it, whether it's overcoming obstacles. You have all those injuries at the start of this year, and this team didn't slow down at all or start slow to start the season. You look at just Ullmark having a fitting moment like this. It just seems like everything's going right for this team, which I think the natural pessimists that are Bruins fans are like, all right, when's this going to run out? But it hasn't happened so far yet. You can even look at Ullmark and how good he was in the first half and be worried about a little bit of struggles down the stretch or what have you. Hasn't been the case. And again, even if they have to kind of curtail his minutes, Jeremy Swayman's playing great. We'll see how he does tonight against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. But so far, Swayman has really kind of held his own as well, barring that last game against the Kraken. So it just seems like everything is humming right along for this team. You look at the only issues for this team right now, it's all good problems to have, whether it's Orlov here, where do you put the rest of the defensemen? Getting guys back up to speed. The power play still to sort some things out. All things considered, everything's going pretty well for this team. When your goalie is scoring goals, your Vezina front runner scoring goals, I think the vibes are pretty good.
So you alluded to it there. Orlov and Hathaway, they're good problems to have. They come in, you give up a first for them, you give up other picks, you give up Craig Smith. They're going to play. They have spots. Hathaway should be in the lineup. Orlov should be in the lineup. What that does mean is you can't run, an extra forward and you can't run 7D. There's got to be some cuts here. There's got to be odd men out. Doesn't mean it's got to be odd men out every night. Now, Grzelcyk is the odd man out against Edmonton from the morning lines. Again, the game has not happened yet. From the morning lines, he's in that 7th defensive spot, which is an interesting move against a fast Edmonton team. I don't know. I mean, I get they're trying different things. So also it's not bad to give a guy a night off. Here and there. But you wrote about this recently for Boston.com in that you kind of make a case for how the Jim Montgomery and the Bruins should handle defense, because I think up front, you take out AJ Greer, Hathaway and Greer are similar enough. You'll take what you get from Greer. But on D, you have 7 defensemen there who legitimately all should play every night.
Yeah, no, it's a good problem for Jim Montgomery to have, a tough one in terms of finding that best 6-man unit, because let's face it, like this team, even before they added Orlov, had probably the best overall D-core in the league. I mean, they were leading the league in goals against per game at 2.05. I want to say that Dallas is second at 2.56. It's a pretty big gap. And again, having Ullmark and Swayman have helped out quite a bit. But this is a team that, as you could say, maybe they could have used a Luke Shen or another depth defenseman. You can make that case there. But to have a guy like Orlov added on is definitely a luxury and is putting this team over the top. So, again, we could also get to the spot where Jim Montgomery now has the luxury of, augmenting his 6-man unit based on whatever the matchups are. If they're going up against a team like Tampa that's, really heavy, especially in the bottom 6, maybe that's when you go with Forbort and Clifton as kind of your third pair and ride those guys. If it's maybe a team like Carolina that's a little bit faster, maybe that's when you can use a guy like Grzelcyk to add more puck-moving talents. And, again, they have the luxury of doing that. I think whichever 6-man grouping you have is going to be pretty good. It's just about finding which one fits in best. And again, Don Sweeney kind of mentioned this on Thursday. Things have a way of solving themselves when you get to the playoffs, right? Like he said it best, that the 6-man you start with on defense at the start of a postseason run is usually not the same 6 guys you have at the end. And if it is, they are going to be very banged up. So, it's even like you look at Hathaway's probably slotting in for Greer. I have to imagine there's going to be quite a few games in the playoffs where Greer's in the lineup and it's probably laying out a big hit. Like, you're going to need everyone for this cup run that the Bruins are planning on launching here. But it's tough, right? You look at Grizzly, I think, is probably the most polarizing one, where I think it's tough to ignore just the underlying numbers, what we see from him, night in and night out, and what he brings. And there's a lot of potential in terms of keeping Grizzly McAvoy together. And then you have your second and third pairings anchored by two other number one guys in Lindholm and Orlov. Like, that is, you pretty much have a number one guy on the ice throughout the game, like, based on the way those things are set up. It's just about whether or not you then weigh, missing out on what a guy like Forbort brings, or Clifton, right? Like, Clifton, you want that physicality in the playoffs. Forbort, he's great on the PK. You saw how much the PK suffered when he was out earlier this year. So it's all about kind of weighing those options. Like, right now, if I had to make a call, I would probably say Forbort might be the odd man out, just because Orlov is a very good penalty killer in his own right, and he can kind of step into those minutes. But it's tough, right? Like, you saw how good Forbort was last year in the postseason against Carolina. So this very well could be a pretty fluid situation for the Bruins. Like, if Grizzly gets knocked around in the playoffs and he has a couple of rough games, then you go with Forbort Clifton, right? Like, at the very least now, the Bruins have options. It's not like the Ottawa series a few years back when it was like Tommy Cross and these guys.
They were pulling people out of the press box to play defense in that series.
Yeah. Like, if you're the Bruins and, a guy's play dips or someone gets injured, if your seventh man up is a guy like Forbort or Grizzly or Clifton, pretty damn good. And even then, like, you got to look at other guys behind that, whether it's for the playoffs, is it Mike Riley? Is it Strawman? Is it Zboril? Like, you
Patrick
have more
Mike
options.
Riley.
You never really know what's going to happen during the postseason, but it's safe to assume you're going to have to draw in a lot of different guys. So I don't think there's a cut and dry answer in terms of who is the best 6-man unit. But again, that's why the Bruins have, 20-something games left to kind of see what the best fit is, because I don't think there is a clear-cut answer right now.
No, there isn't. And I think that you hit on it. Again, it comes down to Grizzly, Forbort, and Clifton as, potential odd men out. And you know what the tough part is, Connor? They all do something different. They're not the same kind of defenseman, right? Clifton's a right shot defenseman. He's been very dynamic this year. Forbort, on the left side, good penalty killer, shutdown guy. Grizzly, good on the power play, good puck mover, good breaking the puck out. It's, smaller. Like, I think some people, and Grizzly can be, obviously you said, polarizing. Sometimes Forbort can be polarizing people. Oh, they need more speed out there. Whereas, he can't move the puck as well. And it's like, well, I think that's when you hit on it at first. It comes down to the matchups. It comes down to who you're facing in the postseason. And I think in the regular season, you're just figuring out who fits best with who. Because again, I think the main goal this year isn't just to win a Stanley Cup, but it's to see Darla Forbort in the Stanley Cup at the top.
Yes, of course.
That is the goal this year. That's more than the cup. So that has to happen too. And whether or not Forbort's a part of that, I think is an interesting question. But yeah, I mean, again, I think there are a lot of people out there who don't like Matt Grzelcyk, but the reality is you need him. You need him. You need the puck mover. You need him to be able to do what he's able to do. But again, does it come at the expense of what Forbort offers? And as you said, like, Orlov can kill penalties. He's a good two-way defenseman. This is a guy who basically is a number one defenseman, number two at least, and to have him potentially in the third pairing. It's funny. Obviously, by the time people are hearing this, they'll have seen 2 games of Orlov, but we've only seen 1 at the time of recording. It's interesting because Orlov could play with McAvoy on the top pairing. That's an easy, you could easily just Lindholm McAvoy. So it's an interesting case of, do they end up fitting together? Does he replace Grzelcyk up there? And then is it, Forbort and Clifton on the third pairing, or, Orlov can play the right side too. So all these different scenarios, but Connor, I must admit, if one of those defensemen, Grzelcyk, Forbort, Clifton, want to solidify their spot in the lineup, they might want to go check out our good friends over at HelloFresh, because listen,
you're right.
You want to make mealtime easy. And you can do that with HelloFresh, with delicious recipes made with fresh, wholesome ingredients delivered to your door. No lines, no hassle, just great tasting meals you can whip up and enjoy in the comfort of home. It is the best. Again, the no lines. I mean, I'll have to get in the grocery store line, deal with grumpy people, the long lines. Nope. Comes right to my door, and I can make it in the comfort of my own home. And guess what, Connor? March is National Nutrition Month, and HelloFresh makes it easy to choose delicious, dietitian-approved meals. Simply look for the dietitian win tag on their menu choices for meals under 700 calories and with 1/3 less sodium. So not only can you do it in the comfort of your own home, but it's healthy as heck too. And it's great. And that's why I've been loving the pork tacos I've been getting with mango salsa. from HelloFresh. It is one of my favorites. I continue to eat it. I continue to enjoy it, make it from the comfort of my own home. I don't know if it's super healthy, but it's very good. I know that. Very, very good. And I am a huge fan, as you guys know. Go to HelloFresh.com/Bruins60 and use code Bruins60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/Bruins60 and use code Bruins60 for 60% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So it's time we do a look around the league. Really just look around the Eastern Conference, because the trade deadline this year might be pretty boring the day of, because as it's happening now, most of the names are off the board. There are been lots of deals over the past couple of weeks, which means the day that the deadline comes will not be anything special. So we'll go through some of the deals around the league because it's interesting. We'll start with Tampa. They get Tanner Jeannot from the Nashville Predators, who I think he was a guy that last year was kind of a breakout player. This year, not so much, as you tweeted, only has 4 more goals than Linus Ullmark. That's the fun. Now, whenever there's a player who scores, single-digit goals, we can make that joke in comparison to Ullmark. But Tampa gave up a haul to get him. There must have been quite the market for Tanner Jeannot. It was like a first, a future second, third, fourth, and a fifth, and Cal Foote. I mean, I don't know. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to replicate the Goodrow, Blake Coleman type move, but for that price, I don't think anyone liked that deal.
No, which you also have to have that with a grain of salt, right? Because usually these moves happen where you're like, Tampa's giving up more first, but and it's for guys that, there's some guys they acquire like Blake Coleman. You're like, damn, that's a good pick. But even like these guys that are fringe or seem like they're due for regression, like Jeannot, who I think shot his shooting percentage was 20%, like 19.8 or something last year.
Something very sustainable.
Yeah, something very, very sustainable. He's going to go down there and score 3 goals in his first 2 games or something like that. And
again, he'll become 2011 Milan Lucic. It'll be Tanner Jeannot down there.
So again, an awful lot to give up for a guy that you really don't know what you have in him, other than, again, a very physical player, which there's value in that in the playoffs. But I think you look at just what he brings to that Tampa team, it just further shows that that's a team that's gearing up for a physical, grueling playoff run. And for them especially, I think you look at the first round matchup, which is pretty much penciled in at this point, and them against Toronto. It's good news for the Bruins, right? Because you're going to have 2 teams that are both loading up. I'm sure we're going to touch on Toronto's moves as well, but those are 2 teams that are pretty much in an arms race themselves, gearing up for that first round matchup, and they're going to kick the snot out of each other in that first round matchup. So again, daunting for the Bruins in terms of the fact that a lot of other teams in the East are loading up, but at the very least you're allowed to see what their first round matchup is, and going into a second round, if you win against a probably beat down Toronto or Tampa team, like those 2 teams are going to just be in a heavyweight bout for what I will assume is going to be 7 games.
I would hope. I mean, I think as hockey fans, it's an incredible series to watch.
Tampa just sweeps them.
Or Toronto, somehow Toronto gets by the first round. They just sweep Tampa, something the Bruins have never been able to do. So that would also be kind of, I guess that'd be a good thing for Toronto in the meme category. But again, Tampa hasn't done a ton else aside from that. Again, still a week. But Toronto has been very active. They made a huge deal with the Blues a couple weeks ago now for Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari. And then right before we came on here on Monday, Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty, which the Bruins were reportedly kind of kicking tires on. It's a very similar type Orlov Hathaway deal. I'd say it's a little lower. I don't think it's as good as the Orlov Hathaway tandem. But Toronto got those 2 plus 2 conditional 5th round picks from Chicago, and they gave up conditional first in 2025, second round pick in 2026, and then 2 prospects. So they gave up really, conditional first for that. So again, to me, Toronto's getting better. Now, again, I still don't believe in the goaltending. I don't. We'll see what happens when we get to the playoffs, but again, I mean, Ryan O'Reilly, you get a good, depth playoff tested center. I know he's not had a great year this year, but then you get Noel Acciari, who's a, good kind of gritty third or fourth liner who can kind of score. Sam Lafferty did the same thing. And Jake McCabe's a capable left shot defenseman who can kind of slot in, tougher minutes, lower down the lineup. So again, Toronto's better, but fortunately the Bruins may not have to face them in the first round. They get them in a bruised second. What do you think of what Toronto's done?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they've done a good job. I think that Acciari fits in what exactly you need in that bottom six. Same with Lafferty. Those are guys that I think a lot of contenders covet when you get to the playoffs, and especially when you look at who Toronto's going to be going up against in the first round. You need other guys that can counter the Maroons and the Perrys and the Genoes and all these other guys that can do a lot of damage. So good on them for that. O'Reilly's been again very solid for them. Defensively, I think defensively, it'll be really interesting to see how they utilize him because he seemed like the perfect third line center, shutdown line. Put him up against Point or Kucherov or one of those guys and lock them down. That seems like a pretty good avenue for success for them there. And then, I think McCabe actually is a really, really good player. He was a guy that I think I did a column about him and why the Bruins should have targeted him as a free agent before they got Forbert. Again, worked out well with Forbert.
That was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah, that was one of the guys.
He was just a guy that even on a very, very crappy Buffalo team always had very good numbers, really taxing minutes, and did well. So I think it's a really good get for Toronto. We'll see how they balance out the cap, whether it's is Matt Murray going to just be on LTIR until the playoffs? Do they have to move a guy like Hall or Kerfoot or someone else like that? So we'll see what the other domino is that has to drop there. But no, I mean, they got a lot better, and Tampa Bay is already a good team, and they got better as well. So again, it's one of those things for the Bruins. It's both good and bad, and good that you don't have to deal with one of them in the first round. And again, they're going to be, beating each other down in that first round. But that also means you're going to have a very, very tough opponent in the second round. Again, whether it's one of those two teams, then a Carolina team that has given you problems for a while, or the Rangers who might be getting Patrick Kane. We'll see what happens there. Or the Devils who got better with Timo Meier. Again, we went into the same scenario in 2019 and looked at all these tough matchups, and they had Columbus and Carolina in those last two rounds. So these things have a way of evening themselves out. But just in terms of reading the tea leaves, even if it's maybe an upset in a round or two, Bruins going to have a very, very tough road through the East.
That's the thing, is the West is doing nothing. I mean, Vegas got Ivan Barbashev. But again, there's just the West, and we've said this all year, is kind of open. The East is open because, well, not really open, but everyone's so good. I mean, you have three legitimate, cup contenders in the Atlantic, and you have three legitimate cup contenders in the Metro. The West does not have that. And I look at, New Jersey getting Timo Meier. They're a better team now. You look at, the Rangers went out and got Tarasenko. We'll see how that works out. Obviously, on paper, very good player. They might get Patrick Kane. We'll see. One of these days, that deal might actually happen. For days now, it's been rumored, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, the Rangers on paper are probably the best team in the Metro. On paper, I'm not saying on the ice, but just if they do get Kane, Kane, Zibanejad, Tarasenko, Kreider, Panarin, that's a wicked good team. And, on defense and
pretty good goalie.
Shesterkin in net. Again, to me, I'm curious. I don't think it's a given that they're going to play Carolina, the Bruins, at least in the third round yet. Because Carolina's done nothing. As these names go off the board one by one, they actually have the cap space to do stuff, and they've done nothing. Who is left? I mean, again, unless they make a big deal for someone that isn't on trade boards, I mean, I don't know what's left to go out and get.
JT, and I heard someone saying there was rumor that JT Miller could be on the move, or someone else like that. Maybe that's who they target. No, he's banged up right now, but that's one where you're oh man, Carolina's not doing anything, which there's a very good chance means they're going to get Chikrin or someone else like that. So we'll see what they end up doing. But I think you looked at all these different potential moves, and when the Maple Leafs got O'Reilly and Acciari, you're that's not bad. But the one that I think we were all dreading was Meier to Carolina, where we're ugh, that's pretty good, and didn't happen. So again, we'll see. I have to imagine you look at that team and how good they've been all year. That'd be a pretty bad look for that ownership and organization if they don't add a big piece with the cap space they do have. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It should be very interesting to see. Conor, what can the people look forward to from you over at Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way this Bruins season with columns, features, breakdowns, all that good stuff. We, as you said earlier, we had a breakdown on looking at the Bruins decor and who might be the odd man out there on the website today. Beyond just Bruins, we have you covered every step of the way with everything else, whether it's Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox, everything going on in Boston sports you can find over at boston.com. So please read over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And I will also say this is the week of Knapsack Prep playoffs. So we will have you covered every step of the way at New England Hockey Journal. It's a very busy week.
Yes, sir.
Lots of stuff, lots of games to go to and players to watch. So it should be very fun. Going to be at St. Ansem on Sunday for the boys. 3 straight championship games. So that should be, I will be hockeyed out for a long time, but it should be very, very fun. So go subscribe to us over there. And that is this edition of Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.